How many people here are Freemasons? The majority. Okay. Well, there's a lot of misconceptions. I'd say about the Bavarian Illuminati specifically. They've given us a lot of great press through these misconceptions. You know, that we have connections, that there's some sort of new world order, or there's some, you know, big grand scheme that these guys put into play 300 years ago that's still rolling on. And you know, to some extent, we gladly accept the the benefits of that. But what I really like to do is kind of clarify who they were, what their importance were to general history and to the interest of anybody who's interested in fraternal societies, secret societies, where they do cross over with Freemasonry, where they don't, more specifically. And just kind of at the end get into a little bit of their ritual, because their society is 100% defunct at this point, so we're not exposing anything that anybody is holding secret at this point, so I feel somewhat comfortable talking about that. So who were the Illuminati? They were founded in 1776 ostensibly by Adam Weishaupt in Bavaria at the University of Ingolstadt. Adam was, he was a professor there. We'll talk a little bit more about his history, but this really started small. This was a club. This was a philosophical organization, a bunch of college students and a professor talking about Enlightenment era ideals that they wanted to see more of at a very strict Jesuit university. This kind of got the ball rolling. These ideas kind of caught on, and they're meeting in the library and whatnot at the university, somewhat secretively, and it started to expand. Weishaupt started to push this into a real system of sorts, somewhat in response to Freemasonry. Weishaupt really felt that Freemasonry wasn't using its power, so to speak, to promote the ideals of reform of government and religious aspects, the things that Freemasonry generally does not include any specific religion or politics within their lodge. He felt like we could do more. He also felt like it was a good old boys club, and that they had lost track of all the ideals that they claimed to have, the secrets they claimed to have, and that it was very expensive at the time. It was quickly becoming something that the gentlemen of the era, we're talking late 1700s, were mostly a part of. It wasn't a very egalitarian society, at least in Weishaupt's eyes. However, seeing Freemasonry, he thought, oh, I should get in on some of that. And as the order developed, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, he really started to recruit from Freemasonry. He meets a man named Knigge in 1780 who joins in the Illuminati. And Knigge is really the main author of the degree system. Knigge is a Freemason, a prolific writer, also really publishing a lot about Enlightenment era ideals. And they really kind of team up, And that's where some of the actual Masonic connections kind of come into play, and we'll talk about those and where they happened and where they didn't. Because I think that the actual history is far more interesting than the speculative history on this. It was a very short-lived order. I mean, these guys, 10 years on the outside, maybe 8, that they were really active, starting with 4 people. At the peak, there were about 2,000 people. In 85, they were officially disbanded. By 1792, even outlying other orders that were kind of working the system, they had all but vanished at that point. So we're really going to kind of try and focus on this segment and not get into what may or may not have happened after that. Adam Weishaupt, as I mentioned, so he was the first professor of canon law at the University of Ingolstadt. Now, that university was a Jesuit university, and it was a big deal that this guy was non-Jesuit. It was the beginning of where the Holy Roman Empire was releasing their grip on Bavaria, but it was a real hotbed for the Jesuits and for the anti-reformists. So they were against reforming religion and against reforming Catholicism. It really reported back to Rome. So they put him down every which way that they could. They were really stifling what he felt like was his methods of teaching, about what he wanted to express these Enlightenment ideals, essentially that there should be a separation between what the church and the government are doing, and in his world, they're kind of acting as one and the same. So he was just basically throttled, and that pissed him off, quite frankly, and that's kind of what started this little club that we were talking about. And out of this club, they started, getting a couple more students that were, getting together, and they were like-minded individuals. It was sort of a humanities club, philosophical club. Grew to about 12 people, and they, weren't really doing degrees. They weren't really doing anything much more than reading by candlelight these sort of lectures and ideas that they were putting together. It's a very loosely knit concept of a club. Weishaupt was really a lecturer and a writer. He wasn't really a systems guy. He wasn't a degree writer. And that's kind of how it started. It was, this sort of after school session. It's like, rap about what we can do to make the world a better place. And that kind of went on to like 75, 76, when they decided to kind of make this official. They originally called themselves the Perfectibilists, which, the idea was that they were sort of the embodiment of the perfect man, or the Uberman and whatnot. They kind of decided that name was a little awkward to roll off the tongue. They decided to change it to the Order of the Illuminati, which was really voted through like very, very closely to the Order of the Bees. So we were like just a hair's breadth away from having a conversation about the great big spooky Order of Bees, which would be kind of a shift from the Illuminati. I don't think it might have had the same impact on pop culture if we were just talking about the Order of the Bees necessarily. But the Perfectibilists, when he founded it, the first thing they did was try and make this system a little bit more concrete. They adopted the Owl of Minerva as their symbol of wisdom, right? I'm sure everybody's kind of somewhat familiar with that as like the main icon of the Illuminati. And then to kind of, sort of embrace this idea of becoming an actual secret society in the university, they took on pseudonyms of sorts. Adam Weishaupt, he became Ajax. Then there was Agathon and Tiberius and Erasmus Roterodamus, and everybody sort of started to kind of hide their personalities a little bit as this form of a real system or a real society started to come together. We'll get into the general timeline shortly, but still talking about Weishaupt, he actually was initiated a Freemason. He was initiated into a Lodge of Strict Observance, which was kind of a more popular system. You have to understand that in the late 1700s, the systems of Freemasonry were all over the map. I mean, there were French workings, there were Scottish workings, there was Rite of Strict Observance workings. There were bodies that were non-Masonic but were very interrelated, like the Rosicrucians and the Martinists, and this whole explosion of ideas that happened through collections of people through these societies were happening. So it kind of makes sense that they would kind of overlap. So anyway, through the Rite of Strict Observance in 1777, Weishaupt is initiated and entered apprentice Mason. He was very likely passed to the degree of fellowcraft. It is very unlikely that he ever actually became a master Mason. By this late 1700s, 78, 77, 78, it was really kind of his intention was to start recruiting heavily from Masonic lodges. He wanted to know what secrets they may or may not have. Ultimately, he was hoping to gain information from higher degrees so that he can really incorporate all of these ideas into his system and make it a complete and thorough initiatic body. He continues to develop this. Eventually, though, around 1780, Knigge comes into the mix. They're getting at their peak. They're really starting to flex some of their political muscle. They're pissing off everybody. The Martinists, the Rosicrucians, the Masons, the Order of Strict Observance. They're all mad at him at this point, and it starts to fall apart. Infighting starts to happen. His right-hand man, Knigge, leaves the order, and he gets fired from his position at Ingolstadt, and that's in 1784. He's eventually voluntarily exiled from Bavaria. He takes off. But he does live a long life, and he continues to write. He wrote prolifically about Illuminist ideals after the Illuminati was done for. And some of his writings are still available, dated but interesting, and he lived a reasonably long life until 1830. So the other half of the Illuminati, this is Adolph Freiherr Knigge. He was really well known for his book on human relations. And Knigge, he was a philosopher. He was extremely well educated. He had a bit of a flair for the dramatic. He enjoyed the process of ritual, believed that the idea of ritual can help open people's minds to absorb new ideas and ideals. And he meets Weishaupt in 1780 through this sort of commingling of Masonic lodges, and as the Illuminati's kind of taking off. And he gets recruited after a couple of years of talking about the benefits of Masonry, the benefits of the Illuminati. He joins the Illuminati, but he stays a Mason. He's a member of two groups. That's to this day a common thing. People live in all kinds of groups without conflict. Nobody saw that as a conflict just yet. But what's really kind of cool about what Knigge did is he brings in an actual kind of lodge type of system to the Illuminati. So up to this point, we've got a guy who's, basically a Republican lecturer, kind of spreading his ideals about Enlightenment stuff in a very simplistic way in a room. Everybody's talking, and he's kind of starting to develop this thing where they've got their sort of favorite names, and then the actual name of the order, and it's sort of a proto-system. But Knigge really solidifies that into an actual system. And he starts to write the degrees, everything, including the ceremonies with knocks, questions and answers, and all sorts of things that we see throughout many fraternal and secret type societies. That's really who brings that to the table. Both he and Weishaupt felt strongly that adding an era of mystery and mythology and speculative romance to the story of how a system can be put together really adds to the recruitment, and they understood this. They were very big proponents of the study of psychology. They knew psychology really well. They used it to their advantage to recruit. They used it to keep membership, and they used it to essentially kind of get their goals accomplished. But without Knigge, we always hear about Weishaupt, and a lot of people would be surprised to hear that without Knigge, there would be no Illuminati. I mean, it would never have really gotten its, grip on other societies to be able to recruit from without the detail, the flair, the drama that he brings to the table.